Hey everybody, my name is Jason Root with Root Health, and thank you for joining us for our presentation today on health informatics for the non-medical professional. This is the third part of this series, and a lot of people told me that after the first two parts that they were a little bit depressing, a little bit dark. We're talking about chronic disease and infectious disease. It's not a great topic, but it is one that needs to be addressed, and that's another reason why it's good to address it with very objective, quantitative analysis, getting away from that emotional connection to it. And so this particular presentation should be a little bit better for you because we are going to be going over strategies to employ as related to those subject matter on infectious disease and chronic disease that are statistically correlated with more resiliency and less risk for those two aforementioned categories of disease. So we are going to be talking about how to employ these strategies from the point of view of an exercise physiologist or some other functional or holistic healthcare practitioner. And of course, these are going to be based upon our 10 main causes of death as highlighted from our CDC table. We've bunched a lot of them together into categories based upon similar interventions or techniques. So a lot of these really are affected by very similar interventions. So we're going to be going over those. And without further ado, let's get into it. All right. So heart disease, stroke, diabetes, kidney disease, cancer, dementia, infectious disease, and respiratory illness. We see that resiliency within the cardiovascular system, within the metabolic system, the digestive system, the endocrine system, the immune system, and the respiratory system. These are all correlated. So the chronic diseases, as well as the chronic conditions that leave us open and susceptible to infectious disease, are all affected positively by the interventions that we're about to go through here. So the first thing we want to go into is biometrics. So the NIH and WHO, or National Institute of Health, or World Health Organization guidelines for body composition should be less than 35 for women and less than 25 for men. Body mass index should be less than 25 for men and women. So when you get those numbers on your, in your physical, you should know that those are statistically relevant. When we go cardiovascular output from the American College of Sports Medicine suggests that you have the ability to achieve greater than or equal to 5 metabolic equivalents on an exercise stress test. So a metabolic equivalent means that when you are lying in your bed at home, you're burning off a certain amount of energy. That's your energy output. And when you go to do physical activity, you want to reach about 5 times that output. So one metabolic equivalent is at rest. How much energy do you expend? And so to reach 5 times that actually is not too hard, but we find that with our lack of physical activity for the general population, that we have a surprising amount of people who are under that, and that measure is correlated statistically with many of those diseases that are in this particular category. So we're going to go to physical activity. So our physical activity recommendations are from the ACSM, we just talked about, and the Centers of Disease Control. Our recommendations are to get and achieve 150 minutes of moderate intensity aerobic activity every week, or with addition of 2 times muscle strengthening activities. And so to get a little bit more specific on that, both the ACSM and the CDC got together and said all healthy adults age 18 to 65 should participate in moderate intensity aerobic physical activity for a minimum of 30 minutes on 5 days per week. Or vigorous intensity aerobic activity for a minimum of 20 minutes on 3 days per week. So the more vigorous the activity, the less time and frequency that you need to be performing it to keep up above that 5 metabolic equivalents that we're looking at. From Root Health, which is me, we have a recommendation for non-healthy adults, because up here we're talking about healthy adults. Over here we're talking about non-healthy adults. Those folks should see, and when we say non-healthy, we mean those folks that do have biometrics that are not within our ranges that we just discussed, or that physical activity metric. I'm sorry, our cardiovascular metric that shows that we're able to get above those 5 metabolic equivalents. Those people should see a professional to bring them to the point that their physical condition is no longer representing a correlation with one of those diseases. So in other words, they should see a educated and experienced professional that can help them get to the point where their biometrics that we just discussed no longer are correlated with the diseases that we had mentioned in our first two videos. So then we got to go into nutrition, because along with physical activity, we have to have proper nutrition. Now, we do have some guidelines out there that almost everybody is familiar with. I do recommend seeing either a registered dietitian or a trusted nutritionist for individual specific behavioral interventions as regarded to one's diet or nutrition input. All right. And then, all right, now, so that was with our metabolic diseases and heart disease. And then we're going to go to, all right, injury resilience and fall prevention. So I recommend, and the ACSM and CDC recommends, that every adult should perform activities that maintain or increase muscle strength and endurance for a minimum of 2 days per week. And from Root Health, I recommend the inclusion of athleticism training, as we see this fellow up here doing some athleticism training for reactivity, for footwork, coordination, stuff like that. That I think is left out of these recommendations, and I think is a very necessary part of what one should be doing, with, of course, those strength activities as well, to keep us out of osteoporosis, to keep our muscles and bones strong. For psychological issues, research done in the area of exercise psychology, which looks at both the clinical outcomes as well as neurotransmitter variations. They conclude that while all physical activity is helpful, particularly effective is repetitive motion, what we usually think of as cardio activity, that keeps the heart rate in a aerobic zone. So I put in the high aerobic zone. I don't mean the higher part of the aerobic zone. I just mean higher than normal in the aerobic zone for 45 minutes or greater is correlated with less, to be effective, at least as effective or greater than Prozac or Zoloft on anxiety and depression. All right, and our conclusion: the impact of infectious and chronic disease as looked at through health informatics or analytical data can be a little bit of a dark issue. But light is found in the fact that prevention is readily available and only limited by the impetus of the individual. So, folks, thanks a lot. If you need to get a hold of me, you have my information on my website and on this video in the notes. So I hope to hear from you if you need. I hope today was helpful, and be healthy. Thanks, folks. Bye.